What's up, YouTube? It's Sad Boy Music back with another tutorial once again. Today we are playing with pads. So, before we get any further, let me explain to you what we got so far. This is a beat I've been making on my own, just playing around with. It's unfinished, unmixed, unmastered, none of that shit. It's just work in progress. So let me go ahead and play the hook going into the verse, and then we'll talk about the pads. But stay tuned till the end of the video, because I have a quick arrangement tip that I'll show you at the very end that might help you make your verses stand out or contrast. So let's listen to this hook into the verse, and then we'll get into the pads. So, as you can hear, the pads are doing some cool stuff in the background. So, first things first, I'm going to turn off everything I have on the pads, and I'm going to talk to you about level 1. So, we have a main intro element, or a main element right here, which is the Rhodes. That's this. But I want my verses to not feel so empty. So I'm going to fill them out with pads. So level 1 is a single pad. And what I did for all of these pads, I'm only using 2, is I copied and pasted the Rhodes MIDI exactly the same. Didn't make any changes. So level 1 is one background pad. And that's what this sounds like. So level 1 is just having a pad playing the chords and all that, just sitting in the background, kind of under everything. Level 2 is what we will jump to the next screen for. So level 2 is we're going to take this pad. I have all these effects turned off except for the EQ. I'm just using a little bit of EQ on for gain staging and a little bit of mixing. But what we can do is we can throw a pan man on there, and what I will do is use my just the preset that I have. So now we have the pad panning. So this is level 1, auto panning your pads. So here's how that sounds. And what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to solo the pad and let you hear what it's doing. And if I bring in the Rhodes, you can hear it kind of just fills up the background nicely, while the Rhodes takes up the main bulk of carrying the verse as an instrument. So that's level 1 and level 2, using a pad and auto panning it. But now let's jump into level 3. What we're gonna do is use 2 pads. And I'm going to take off this auto panner, and I'm just going to pan them left and right. So now we have 2 pads. Let's hear how that sounds with them panned. That's cool. But in my opinion, it sounds a little unbalanced with the way that they're fully to the left and to the right. If you're doing LCR mixing and you only want left and then center right, that's totally fine. But I tend to want a little bit more out of my mixes. I want movement, I want depth, I want everything that I can in a mix. So now we're going to take it to the next level. So this is going to be level 3, or level 4, where we auto pan both pads. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my pan man and show you what I'm doing. I have 2 pan mans, one on each. I'm going to jump to the other screen and show you what they're doing. So we have these 2 pan mans, and if you take a look, they're actually pretty similar with just a few differences. So let's start off with the main section over here. I'm doing a rhythm shape. There's a few different options. I'm like using the rhythm shape, and I have it set to half note on the right for the right pad. On the left pad, it's the same half note synced to the tempo of the track, which is 120, except this one is set to the left. Then we get into our main controls over here, which is the groove, offset, width, and smoothing. So for the left one, I have the groove more towards a shuffle, whereas on the right one, I have the groove more towards a swing. That just kind of affects how the rhythm is going to play between your 2 different ears. Then on the offset, I have the left one set all the way left, and the right one set all the way right. Then for the width, I have them both cranked to the max, and for the smoothing, I have them both around the center. Next, we get into the more complicated controls, and then we'll get into the rhythm editor last. So both of them, the threshold is about the same, the attack is about the same, halfway, and the low threshold to capture as much of the sound coming through as possible, medium attack, and fast release. And the mode is set to envelope, not gate. Then for the offset modifier, the left one is panned all the way to the left, and the right one is panned all the way to the right. For the width modifier, it's set to the slim for both. And for the rate modifier, it's set to slow for both. Then we get into the actual rhythm. I'm using a half note shape preset with the 8th note grid. I kind of left all of this to the default and kind of just tweaked the individual settings. I didn't really play too much with the graph. But as you can see, they have opposite curves. This is the right one. It goes up like that, then down, then back up, then down. Then this one goes up all the way, then down a little bit, then up, and then back there. So it's a reverse of the other one. So they're kind of panning in opposite directions. And I'm going to let you hear that with the Rhodes, and then I'll mute the Rhodes and let you hear it, what they're doing on their own. So that actually sounds pretty nice. But I'm going to take this one step further and go to level 5. And for this one, I'm just going to play you the sound, and then I'm going to explain what I did. So try to guess it if you can. Leave a comment down below and try to guess what I'm doing with this level 3 before I go ahead and explain it. So let's take a listen now. So, if you couldn't tell, that was a side chain. So, I'm going to jump over to the other screen and explain it. Basically, what I'm doing here is I'm letting the kick, snare, and clap side chain the pads. And this has a dual effect of 1, making the drums punchier, and 2, adding more rhythm and depth to your pads, making them sit more in the background, kind of pushing them out of the way of the center of the mix, and just letting them be a background element that you can play with and just kind of have sitting under the track. So, what I have here are my drums in orange, and I have my drum bus over here. What I'm doing is I'm taking the kick, which is the first one, you can see it's in mono, and then my snare is the second one, and my clap is the third one. So let's go over this. My kick is sending to 3 different side chains. The main kick side chain, which I use for the bass, which I'm not going to cover in this video. Then I have the pad left and pad right side chain. So what does that tell you immediately? I'm using 2 different side chains, one for the left and one for the right. Why is that? It's totally optional and up to you, but this is something I like to do to add a little bit more interest or variety. But I'm taking the snare and sending it to the left side chain, and taking the clap and sending it to the right side chain. So both side chains are taking the kick, but the left one is also taking the snare, and the right one is taking the clap. But neither of the snare or the clap are on each other. So there are individual side chains. Then what I do is I take the tracks and I just unroute them from the master, and I have them sent in a side chain to the left and the right pads. So what I can do is open up the Fruity limiter. I'm just using the stock Fruity limiter plugin. From limiter, I swap to compressor. I engage the side chain. I set the curve to 8. Fastest attack, slow release, little bit of sustain, low threshold, and a high knee-in ratio. And that just ensures I'm doing a really side chain, it's a very obvious side chain. So I'm gonna play it again, and now you can hear it. And if I turn on the drum bus, you'll hear it with the actual drums. So let's try that. So that's 5 levels of playing with pads. So now I'm just going to go ahead and play the whole verse like that. Not the whole verse, but just that whole section there with everything. And then I will go to my little quick tip. So that's how the verse sounds. Now I'm gonna take you back to the other screen and explain my little quick tip. So my quick tip has to do with arrangement. So this is an arrangement tip. So we start off with an 8-bar intro, then we go in, and it's a very low energy. Your intros are always usually low energy or building up hype, building up to something. Then we have our hook, which is where all the energy is. Then we go into a verse and we lose some energy. So as you can see, what I did was I took out the main instruments and the lead, and I just have the Rhodes, the piano instrument, playing the piano. So I'm going to play the first verse, or play the hook into the first verse. So now I'm going to play the second hook into the second verse, and you're going to hear it's going to sound different. And if you keep listening to all the way through the verse, they both sound identical at the end. So what am I doing? Basically, on the first verse, I'm letting the Rhodes be the lead instrument by playing it first, alone for 8 bars. Then I bring in the pads. Then on the second verse, I swap it up and I let the pads take over as the main instrument for the first 8 bars, and then I bring the Rhodes in as a secondary instrument. And this creates variety in your hooks, or in your verses, to make them contrast so that one stands out from the other, but they don't sound too different. It's the exact same notes, same chords, same everything, just different instruments. And that's a quick arrangement tip, because usually on songs, the hooks are usually the loudest part, and then the second verse is usually the quietest part of a song, besides maybe the intro and outro, of course. But so I'm letting my second verse dip into real quiet without having a main instrument. It's just the background instruments. And the hook, and the other thing about the pads is, if you notice during the hooks, the pads don't play, except for during this section, which is the bridge. So after the second hook, I'm going into an 8-bar bridge and then going into the final hook. So I let the pads play for the bridge because the bridge is supposed to be a little bit more, it's supposed to contrast. So I'm playing the main instruments and then the background instruments. The main hook, I'm basically playing the hook part with the pad part, and then on the last hook, I'm bringing everything in: 808, pads, lead, Rhodes, and my two lead instruments over here. So this track is, of course, unfinished. It's a work in progress. I'm still working on it. I don't even have an 808 for the verses yet. So it's a work in progress. But I just wanted to show you guys this little quick snippet of a track while it's in progress, and like a quick deep dive into my mind of what am I thinking about when I'm producing and what you can do to achieve something in your mixes. So these are the 5 levels. I'm gonna run over them real quick. So the level 1 is just having a basic pad. Level 2 is auto panning it. Level 3 is where you have 2 pads and you pan them opposite. Level 4 is where you auto pan them. And then level 5 is where you auto pan them and sidechain them. So let me know, because not every level works with every track. Not every version of a pad will work with every version of a track. Let me know what you guys think of this technique, what you guys thought about it, how it sounds to you, whether you're going to be using any of these. And that's all for today. Thank you all so much for watching. This is Sad Boy Music signing off. Goodbye.